I began to ask God, why? Lord, why me? And God said, why not you? I need a good shepherd to go get my sheep and bring them to me. And when all revenues has been exhausted, that's when I began to manifest myself. And I understood at that point that God was using me to be an example for those individuals that was actually incarcerated. I began to bring forth the word of God. I began to help them spiritually, physically, mentally, and also with their cases. I had the administration put a law library down in the unit where I was, so I actually began to write case law for a lot of those individuals who could not read or write and was forced to put their lives in the hands of other individuals. You wonder why a lot of these inmates are forced to plea bargain to avoid facing increasingly hard sentence, because the majority of them cannot read and write, they don't comprehend, so they put their lives in the hands of these individuals who are supposed to basically represent them and represent them to the fullest. But however, that was not the case. I remember a situation where a young man was faced with 0.9 grams of crack cocaine, and of course he was facing 13 years. And I began to look into his situation. I said, well, they're outside the guideline, and when I looked up case law pertaining to his situation, I helped him prepare a motion. I gave it to him and asked him to go give it to his attorney. He came back to the unit and says, well, the attorney said, well, this is no good. Who gave you this? And, people talk negative about jailhouse lawyers, but sometimes jailhouse lawyers are not better than the lawyers that's representing you. And I truly thank God for an opportunity to be able to help those brothers with their cases, preparing case law for them, explaining to them the ramification of what transpired in their situation. But as I said to them, don't go on court lying, saying that you didn't commit the crime, and in fact that you know that you did, because it's only going to count against you. That young man who was faced with 13 years for 0.9 grams of crack, he wound up getting the sentence reduced to 3 years. He had already he served 2 years, and of course he took the drug rehab program, which they knocked off another 8 months or 16 months. And by the time he got to prison, he was actually signing his name and getting back out. So I truly thank God for being able to be an example for those individuals who was incarcerated that couldn't read and write. And I understand the reason why God sent me there, to be that bright light shining at the Federal Detention Center, where they have a conviction rate of 98.8% conviction. Finally, my attorney came to me. He says, Ray, I don't want anything to do with your case anymore. And I said, why is that? He says, I don't want anything to do with your case, and basically told me on a manuscript, write down everything that happened. He said, because one day it could be a bestseller book, possibly a movie. He took me back to court, and he told the judge, he said, Your Honor, I don't want anything else to do with this case. And the judge asked him why, the magistrate judge asked him why. He says, well, Mr. Hicks and I, we don't see eye to eye at this particular time, and basically I just want to get off the case. They gave me another court-appointed attorney. Under coercion, he basically tried to force me to take the 16.5 months that the DA offered me. They went from facing life imprisonment to 16.5 months. They said, Mr. Hicks, you've been down for 3 months. You've been down for, 11.5 months. You'll do 3 more months and go home. I said, absolutely not. I'd rather take life imprisonment. And I told this attorney, I said, I haven't done anything wrong. I wouldn't even take time served, because I've never engaged in any type of criminal mischief. I've never been in trouble my entire life, and no one's going to entice me to say that I've done something that I did not do. I'd rather take my case to trial. Well, eventually that attorney took me to court, and ultimately he got off my case as well. And my wife went through the Postal Service, through thrift savings, and she was able to take out $25,000 from her retirement. And we got an attorney who was a former prosecutor and never lost a case in 15 years. And he said, if I've never seen an innocent man, he said, Ray, you're one of them and you shouldn't be here. And he says, I'm going to get you out. He said, you're not a drug dealer. I know what a drug dealer look like because I've represented a lot of them. He said, you're most definitely not a drug dealer. And on August 27th of 2001, we took my case to federal trial before a 12-panel jury. They chose 11 whites, 1 black, and 1 black alternate, all business people. And the chief judge said to the DA, where are the drugs involved in this case? And the DA said, Your Honor, we don't have any drugs. He slammed the gavel and said, you mean to tell me we incarcerated this man, a highly decorated officer? He was faced with natural life imprisonment, and you have nothing to substantiate the charges? So why is he here? They said I gave confidential law enforcement information. So my attorney, he subpoenaed the communication operator supervisor. She came in and testified from the Broward Sheriff Office. She said, Mr. Hicks, I was told to conduct an investigation and see whether or not Mr. Hicks ran FCIC, NCIC. She testified that Mr. Hicks had not ran FCIC, NCIC, and she went on to say that you have to take a 40-hour course at BCC. There's a sign-in sheet, there's a certificate from FDLE at the completion of the course, and you must use a social security number. Then they said I was on audio tape. She said, and I told my voice cannot be viewed on any tape. So when they played the tape for the jury and the judge, they found out that it was not my voice on the tape, but in fact it was the same deputy who placed me on arrest at my home. That gentleman still works for the Broward Sheriff Office now, has been promoted to a higher rank. Every person that was involved in my situation has now been promoted to captains, lieutenants, sergeants, majors, lieutenant colonels, detectives, and they still work for the department to this day, except for the ones that actually retired. The jury deliberated. They came back with a not guilty verdict within 30 minutes. And I come home, the harassment continued. They, on January 6th of 2004, they sent me death threats, said I'll be lying in my room in a pile of blood. And my neighbor, who lived 3 doors down from me, she came to my house one morning and said, Mr. Hicks, I'm afraid for you and your family. I said, why? Her name is Miss Williams. She said 2 deputies parked in her driveway, and when she came out around 3 or 4 o'clock that morning and inquired why were they there, they told her to mind her effing business. They had an investigation going on. And she said that she witnessed them walking from my residence. Lo and behold, that's when the death threat came. They said I'll be lying in my room in a pile of blood. I called communication 911 and explained the situation to them, and they dispatched a unit to my home. Once the deputy arrived there, last name Watson, I said, Deputy Watson, look at this. I said, look at this, man. Listen to this on this answer machine. So as he began to listen to the answer machine, he says, Ray, be very careful. You know how these people play. And of course, it was during that time when I basically said, you know, I'm not going to let these people come here and kill me and my whole entire family. So lo and behold, BSO, 55 cops stormed my home at gunpoint, said I was shooting at someone in my backyard. I said, how could I be the shooter when my wife and I, we just coming out of court? They told me, shut my effing mouth, they'll blow my effing brains out. This is what one of the black guys said to me. I didn't know who he was, he didn't know who I was. And I said, man, if you put your hands on me, I'm going to make you kill me right now. And lo and behold, he said, I mace you. I said, I eat mace. And one of the gentlemen who saw a white guy said, come on, Ray, man, don't do this. Don't do this, Ray. I said, man, this is a repercussion of my civil case that I filed against the department for the false arrest and imprisonment and all these other different things. And lo and behold, they had me handcuffed. They roped off my house. They made it seem like it was the biggest crime scene. Neighbors, people driving by, they roped off my house with yellow tape, and everybody was just watching. So of course there I am handcuffed in my backyard for about 6 hours. So I told the deputy, I said, man, the cuffs is cutting into my skin. Can you loosen the cuffs up? He told me, you'll be all right. I said, you know what, you're absolutely right. I'll be fine. And 6 hours later, a white guy shows up in my yard. And I tell my wife to call my attorney and advise him. So he said, just tell Ray, let these people do whatever they're going to do, and we'll do what we have to do later. So, of course, I told my wife to go present the documents to this Caucasian gentleman that showed up in my yard 6 hours later. And when my wife presented the documents to him, within seconds, 55 cops dissipated within 15 seconds. They were all gone. They didn't arrest me that day. They never took me into custody. And later on, a couple weeks later, I received a letter in the mail with them charging me with discharging a firearm. So I take that case to trial. And when I go to trial up in Deerfield, and the judge said, well, we're the victim involved in this case. And the prosecutor said, we don't have a victim. He said, did you do a ballistic test? They say, no. He said, where are the bullet casing? We don't have any bullet casings. He said, okay, where the officer that generated this probable cause affidavit? He said, the officer no longer worked for the department. He said, well, you the prosecutor. How is it that you can't find this guy? So the state asked for a continuance, and the judge said continuance is denied. We're going to proceed with trial. Within 10 minutes, I was tried by the courts, and I was acquitted by the judge. So I went back into the community. I got a job working in boot camp, working with young adolescents who had problems with the law, and just inspired them to do the right thing. I helped over 25 kids accomplish their high school diploma, and my mother at the age of 55, and my brother at the age of 32. And I won the African American Achievers Award from a philanthropist, God bless him, as a rest in peace, Mr. Jim Moran. African American Achievers, that's what it's called. BSO stormed my home a third time. On October 10th of 2005, 20 cops stormed my home at gunpoint. And my 4-year-old son was there. My daughter was 18 years of age at the time. And they drugged me out of my home. And I said, what is this about? We got a warrant for your arrest. I said, for what? This time. Well, we can't discuss it. I said, what do you mean you can't discuss it? So I said, okay, y'all go ahead and do whatever you got to do. And when the sergeant told the deputy, which is the deputy that I know, his name was Crumb, basically he said, Ray gonna need a double set of cuffs. And the sergeant said, F that, put the effing cuffs on him. So both of them get engaged into an argument. And when the sergeant saw that Crumb was not gonna back down, he basically says, okay, go get the shackles. I said, Sergeant, what's the purpose of the shackles? He said, Ray, you're a big guy, we don't want any problems. I said, Sergeant, if it was gonna be a problem, it'd have been a problem a long time ago. I said, but you have a job to do. They escorted me down to booking. When I arrived to booking, there was about 20-25 cops, deputies standing there waiting on me in the Sallyport area. One of the deputies who I helped get a job, last name Lee, he stayed back in booking because he said it came over the air that I was violent. But when they got there, I was talking to one of the young ladies who I went through the Crossover Academy with. You know, little did they know I had built a relationship with God. And there I am, you know, still unaware of the fact of what they arrested me for. And ultimately, all the deputies, they left, they take me in the booking, and then they set me right in the middle where everybody could see me. So, of course, at that particular time, you know, a rage just began to come over me. And the Spirit of the Lord just said to me, did they not beat me? Did they not spit on me? Did they not crucify me for your name's sake? Humble thyself. So, of course, I humbled myself and asked them what was I being arrested for. They told me child abuse. I said, child abuse? I said, how could it be child abuse when I just won the highest award in the community and I've never touched my own kids? I have 3 beautiful kids. I never put my hands on them. So, of course, they kept me in there. I was arrested that morning. I stayed in there until about 12 o'clock that night. The bondsman, A+ bail bonds, came and bonded me out early that morning because I know the brother. I've been knowing him for quite some time, Mr. Allen. And when I get out, I got prepared to take that case to trial. And the prosecutor, she did a thorough investigation. She threw the case out, no prosecution. And I began to write everyone. I wrote President Obama. I wrote the Inspector General's office. I wrote FDL Lee. I wrote the governor's office. I reached out to Steve Harvey. I reached out to Bishop T.D. Jake. I reached out to Bishop Eddie Long. I reached out to some Bishop Curry. Everybody I reached out to, but it was always to no avail. And finally, you know, I just basically got to a point where I felt like no one was going to really do anything about the situation. So it gives me an honor and a pleasure to be here today to even talk about it. I thank God for being able to sit here and talk about this saga that has been circumventulating throughout me and my family life for so long. And it's amazing to me because even when I was an inmate, I won a life saving award where I saved this gentleman's life when an officer walked out and left the unit unattended. But yet still I was there. You know, he had seizures, convulsions, swallowed his tongue, but I was able to go down and get his tongue and roll him over inside until the medical staff and the officer arrived back into the park. The warden said that inmate Hicks, you know, saved this other person's life. So again, I just thank God for, just continue to be who I am in spite of the situation that I've been faced with. And I just think it's unfortunate. My family and I, we lost everything. I lost my home, my cars, my finances. I couldn't feed my family. I applied for food stamps, unemployment. I couldn't get it. And it's just a shame and a disgrace that these men and women could actually subject me and my family to this type of harsh punishment for things that I have not done. And I truly thank God for Ty, as well as Mr. Paul, Mr. AD, a lot of the individuals who has played a pivotal role and allowed me an opportunity to talk about these incidents that transpired in my life, because I have never been afforded the opportunity to talk about what happened. From the time that I was arrested to the time that I was being exonerated and acquitted, the media have done everything they could to destroy my character, my name, and every other aspect of my life. So again, I truly thank God for this opportunity to be here and talk about it to this day.